It is defeating and discouraging. And all I'm pointing out are things they're not doing right on a consistent basis. And there's another way. That if I were to just shift my focus to, there were things you were doing right that I was not even acknowledging or addressing, that had I focused on that, you might have done more of that. But because I wasn't focusing on that, you just got defeated and discouraged and you stopped doing the things I liked.
The negative bias, confirmation bias, cognitive bias, what you look for, you will find.
How I show up impacts how you show up. So if I show up with a filter expecting you to be a certain way and to fall short in some way, guess what? You do. You can't live outside of that box that I put you in.
One of the defense mechanisms we have as humans is acting out.
Yes.
One of the reactions we have when we feel neglected, when we feel like this isn't working, is acting out, seeking out approval, acceptance in ways that are destructive.
And more than that, I could act out in eating. I could act out in gambling. It's looking to cope with the loneliness, with the conflict in unhealthy ways. And it can be a lot of different ways that we act out in the relationship.
Anytime anyone tries to control something that you have no business controlling, you will always feel out of control.
More out of control.
Have you ever found yourself focusing on the negative aspects of your relationship? Always nitpicking at your partner's flaws? If so, you are not alone.
Right, because in this episode, not only are we going to share how we have been there, but we're going to explore how the powerful impact of what we focus on grows. And if we're focusing on the negative, that actually shapes our perception and entire reality of the relationship itself.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the negative consequences of the constant criticism. We're going to uncover the roots of this behavior. Like, why do I do this? Why am I nitpicking? Why am I looking at the negative aspects of my relationship?
And by the end of this episode, you're going to have tools on how you can turn the negative into positive for your relationship and build a stronger marriage together. If you haven't already grabbed your journal, go ahead and go do that. You're going to have a lot of insight show up for you in this episode around how you perceive your own spouse. And I just want to, again, take our audience back to 2017. We were doing counseling sessions about one time a week in our marriage. We were actively pursuing better for ourselves.
Yes.
We
Yes.
did not want the old. We wanted something new. And so we did find Marley, our counselor, was amazing, and she helped us a lot through a lot of things. And today, I'm going to read a section from the part that I wrote about something she helped me discover about myself that was very eye-opening to me.
Stick around. We are going to get to those practical strategies that if you relate to this, it's going to set you up to win.
For sure. Okay, ready? Here we go. I was always focused on the mistakes of others. I just couldn't acknowledge their improvements or good things they had accomplished because there were always more improvements that needed to take place. One day we were sitting in our therapist's office and Travis was sharing how hurtful it is when I come home from work, rather than saying hello or giving out kisses to him and Haven, I would point out how bad Haven's hair looked and immediately fix it. I was listening to him say this and was offended that he saw this as a problem. Hair is my responsibility and my daughter represents me when others see her hair. I tried explaining my side of this in several different ways. And finally, our therapist gently pointed out the fact that Travis isn't a hairstylist. And when he is fixing our daughter's hair, he is doing the best out of love for her. And while it may not be to my standards, can I focus on the fact that he is a dad that wants to try to do things like this for his daughter? He could choose not to do it at all, she said. He wanted to give up trying because it was never good enough for me. This opened a conversation that I had never entertained before. Where else in my life do people feel like they will never be good enough or be able to reach my standards?
The power of what we focus on.
It
Right?
grows.
Thanks for reading that, and thanks for your vulnerability of sharing a story where you're portraying you weren't your best self in those moments.
Yes.
And yet you were indicating that you had a focus. You had a focus on things that seemed very important to you at the time. And what we want to bring up is what we focus on, we find. So our attention can shape the perception of what reality is in our relationships.
Right. I share this example, but what I want you to really understand is this is just one example. This was my life. I was looking for mistakes in others because of what I had going on in my own self of
That's good.
lack of confidence, and it created this extreme standards for myself to live into, this performance-based lifestyle that others needed to perform as well to meet my standards so that
what's going on the inside is projecting itself on the outside.
Exactly. And so I focused on you and all the things you were not doing right. And when our couples come to us and they're working through the intensive program, it is the focus is the other spouse.
Yeah.
I'm here because of them, because they can't get it together and they have ruined my life. And it's very typical, and we were there too.
And you may relate to that as well.
And what my goal is to help the spouse really see that, man, if I focus on the negative, it is defeating and discouraging. And all I'm pointing out are things they're not doing right on a consistent basis. And there's another way. That if I were to just shift my focus to, there were things you were doing right that I was not even acknowledging or addressing, that had I focused on that, you might have done more of that. But because I wasn't focusing on that, you just got defeated and discouraged, and you stopped doing the things I liked too. Like the things you were doing well, because it was just so defeating. So it's not an easy task. It's not easy to say, yeah, I'm just going to make a switch to the positive. And I've really seen that in coaching. It takes intentionality of really thinking about how to do that. And that's what we're going to share
Because
today.
there's a reason why you're focused on it. I mean, there's a purpose and a reason why there's a focus on it.
Yes.
So you're right. You can't just get rid of it. You can't just remove that.
Right.
So you may relate to that too. Great news. Stick around. We're going to go through great strategies and tips to walk through this. But I want to identify the next thing, and that is the negative bias. Confirmation bias, cognitive bias, what you look for, you will find.
Anything. You can put anything in the blank there. It's just the same thing if you were to buy a red Mustang. All of a sudden, you're going to see all the red Mustangs in Greenville.
Or put it practically in our marriage. It was about a year ago where I felt like your love for me had dissipated. I felt like you did not want to be connected with me. And then I started looking for ways that you were disconnecting from me, and I found them everywhere.
Mm-hmm. And the more you tried attempts to connect, the more off-putting it was because of how you were going about it, because you saw me as disconnecting.
Exactly.
So
it
disconnected me.
I had a negative view of you, and I projected that onto you, and I was asking you to change the way that you were.
Right.
And
Which there was nothing
none of that was
wrong
working.
with what I was doing
No.
to begin with. It was
No.
your view of me and your focus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good. This has a cost. Let's just talk about that. We just shared briefly the cost is how I show up impacts how you show up. So if I show up with a filter expecting you to be a certain way and to fall short in some way, guess what? You do. You can't live outside of that box that I put you in because
No.
I'll find it no matter what.
Yeah, you're right. If you view me that way, in fact, if you view anybody a particular way, and you're like, I know them. I hear this all the time with our coaching clients. One spouse will say to the other one, I know exactly who they are. I know exactly what they're going to do.
I know what he's
everything.
gonna
I
say
know
right
everything
now."
about them. And you don't. I used to think I knew her. I don't. I'm trying my best right now. And what's interesting, though, is when I feel like I do know you, you change.
Well, that's the thing. When
Something
you
changes.
think you know me, it doesn't give me the ability to change. It keeps me stuck. Rather, if you show up with curiosity of, I don't know you, but I want to learn, then I can show up different.
That's good.
That's big.
Let's go back to the cost you were talking about, because there are costs. For instance, there's a cost to criticism. Mm-hmm. There's a fee that we're paying when we're being critical, and that is it erodes the self-esteem of the spouse. Mm-hmm. It erodes the self-esteem. It leads to emotional distress of the people that we love in our lives.
It also has me neglecting things in our relationship that really need attention. And due to neglect from one or both spouses, that can cause loneliness, depression, sadness. It can lead to bitterness and resentment that I am not appreciated or valued in this relationship.
A side note to that is the Gottman Institute in Washington did a study, and they came up with the 4 major indicators that you know that you're about headed for a divorce. And one of those is criticism in the marriage.
Huge. And then the cost of conflict. Like when there is unresolved conflict, it takes such a toll on the relationship. It includes stress and anxiety and overwhelmed feelings. It can lead to division and disconnection in the marriage.
Another thing just to look at is when there is conflict in the relationship, whenever I feel like we are not on the same team and it's consistently like that, one of the defense mechanisms we have as humans is acting out.
Yes.
One of the reactions we have when we feel neglected, when we feel like this isn't working, is acting out, seeking out approval, acceptance in ways that are destructive.
And more than that, I could act out in eating. I could act out in gambling. It's looking to cope with the loneliness, with the conflict in unhealthy ways. And it can be a lot of different ways that we act out in the relationship. None of them are healthy. So sometimes it's really difficult to see our spouse with the best intentions, especially if they do not have a humble spirit. A lot of times it's difficult to be able to see the good in your spouse. And you may be thinking to yourself, well, I'm not critical. I don't show up that way. But I think it's important that we ask our spouse with a humble spirit. It's not coming to them and be like, do you think I'm critical so that I can defend myself? It's really, do you want to know what it's like to be on the other side of you?
Ooh.
Took me a while to even say yes to that question because I was afraid to know what it was like on the other side of me for a long time. But as I've gotten healthier, I do want to know. And so maybe it looks like you asking your spouse, do you feel like I focus on the negative in you or our marriage? And if so, how can I support you better in this? They most likely will share how you show up.
Most people are unaware of how they show up in life. Most people are unaware of how they are on the other side of other people. And when I first went through my coaching program, one of the main things they asked me to do that completely transformed my life is to go to people close to me in a safe place and say, hey, no matter what you say, the words that are going to come out of my mouth are, thank you, tell me more. Thank you, tell me more. And I want to ask them, what is it like on the other side of me? Whoa, I had 6 people.
You learned a lot about yourself.
I learned a lot about myself by asking other people, what is it like? So I'm not telling you you need to do that. But what would be great is for you to have a viewpoint of, oh, I do impact other people by the way I act, by the way I do things in life. I have an impact.
And what I focus on.
That's good.
Has an impact. And let's just talk about, where does this behavior come from?
There's got to be a root, right?
There's
There's got to be a root that we can look at. One of those is personal experiences, like our own personal experiences, maybe a negative childhood experience. For most people, you could have the best childhood, the best parents, and you may still experience negative childhood experiences where the enemy is going to write a lie on your heart that would have you showing up, ruining relationships later on in life.
Especially if there was criticism in the childhood. That is where, that's all I know, is to show criticism to others because there wasn't a good positive role model that was there. And another thing is having unmet needs. That is an area where when we have a lack of love or emotional needs met, validation or attention, this can actually lead to control and perfectionism. And that's what I was seeing show up in my own life is I needed to control you around our daughter's hair. She was like, 2? And it's when hair is like all hanging in the face and stuff like that. And she's playing and enjoying herself and her hair would get messed up. And I mean, it's just ridiculous. I was so much into control and perfectionism that I had to control something like that. Something impossible to control of a 2-year-old.
I so appreciate Marley, our therapist. I
know you do.
appreciate your open heart to look at that. Because it was destroying my heart.
I know. I'm so sorry.
And I'm very grateful that you chose to see something different. You could have been prideful. You could have been obstinate. You could have continued on with your thought process. Because you did feel very strongly the way you felt.
Yes.
And it makes sense looking at it from a different viewpoint.
Yes.
I just want to bring the audience back into what we're talking about. What we're talking about, what you focus on grows. What you focus on will grow.
And I just want to ask you, what are you focused on right now in your spouse? What is it? The Holy Spirit will bring something to your mind. That's what I want you to really be thinking through as we continue to share. Let's move on to another root. Thorns. Thorns are roots. If you're wondering what in the world is a thorn, go back to episode 15 is when we start talking about thorns and we give you a really good picture of what that is. And we talk about it in a lot of our episodes all the way up to this. So
the best way to describe it is lies written on your heart from an enemy. And we have a real enemy. Ephesians 6:12 describes it's not flesh and blood, but a hierarchy of evil. And the evil one can write lies on our hearts, especially at a young age, that has us looking at life, looking at people in our lives from a filter that may not be true, that would have us looking at, like, for instance, in this relationship, there are times when I'm believing a lie and I will look at you that you're not on my team anymore and that you've disconnected from our relationship. It's a lie from the pit of hell, but there are times when he whispers that to me and I will believe it.
Right. And so let's just talk about, how does this look in reality? Like, one of the ways this looks is low self-esteem. And it is projected on, your own insecurities are now projected onto your spouse. That's where that criticism is coming from, is that low self-esteem, and that comes from a thorn.
Yeah, next one is fear of rejection. It can lead to this hypervigilance and tendency to find fault. It's really to avoid being hurt,
Right.
this rejection.
And then we've already talked about perfectionism, which is just unrealistic expectations that nobody can live up to. That's just another way that a thorn is going to present itself. And for me, my perfectionism all came from the thorn of, I'm not good enough. And so maybe that is for you as well.
And we've only listed 3. There's many more. There's so many more that we could come up with to
Here
share.
are just a few reactions to those thorns and what those reactions will look like. This is all or nothing thinking. Black and white terms, focusing on extremes rather than nuances. Like, you're just never going to be personally responsible. If you're not doing it now, you're never going to be that way. You're never going to change. Things like that. That's all or nothing thinking.
That's right. Another one is catastrophizing, exaggerating the negative consequences or events or mistakes that we have. The sky is falling. Everything is going bad. We will be ruined. I do this, Adele, in our finances sometimes. Let me back that sentence up. I used to do this in our financing. You would say something about finances. You would go purchase something, a large purchase. And in my mind, I would catastrophize, you're just going to take all the money. We're just going to be broke.
We just got freedom over this like 2 months ago.
Yeah, that's right. Amen to that.
It was still showing up.
Amen to freedom. But it is real. It's real that if I focus on it, that's where I'm going to go.
Yeah.
And catastrophizing, it exaggerates the negative consequences. It destroys the mindset that I have that it is going to be this horrible way versus maybe 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 other ways that it could be.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And then overgeneralization. Like if you've done it once, you're going to always do it.
Oh,
and
we get that a lot.
Based on very limited experiences.
They will always
versus,
be this way.
Yeah. Exactly.
Once a cheater, always a cheater. Once a blank, always a blank. I mean, you put in whatever it is that you would like to put in, but it really does pigeonhole or overgeneralize that people cannot change.
Right.
There's no access for them to change. They have to be this particular way.
That's right. So destructive to the relationship. Another root is the relationship dynamics, like power imbalances. That's a big one where there's a significant power or imbalance, and that's where this maintaining control comes in with criticism. So that's just another one to consider.
I'm so sorry. That was me. I was so critical with criticism. I would use my power imbalance to try to put you down in ways. Not overtly try to put you down, but through criticism and things like that to make you less than in my words. And I'm just so sorry I would do those things. So
Thank
destructive.
You. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I received that, and I am sorry too.
And it has a lot to do with what I focused on, obviously. Like
Me
what we're
too.
talking about here is I would focus on ways, but these power imbalances is where I would use criticism to maintain control over you because I didn't feel I had control in other ways.
Right. And man, that control on me had me doing opposite things I never wanted to do.
And you may relate to that
running
too.
from your control. Don't control me. I am in control of me. You get the worst of me when that happens.
Anytime anyone tries to control something that you have no business controlling, you will always feel out of control.
More out of control. Yes. And then the last one is unhealthy communication patterns. So when we're focusing on like negative body language, harsh tone, blaming, like all of those things, it just contributes to.
I feel like you're talking to me right now, Adele.
Well, I have my own unhealthy communication patterns,
I feel like you're calling me out.
Withdrawing and isolating and.
But mine is negative body language, harsh tone. Sometimes, thank God, it's not criticism anymore. I have been delivered from criticism or cynical talking. Sarcasm. That's what I was looking for. I've been
I don't
delivered.
call him, I'm like, is that a snarky comment right now?
I've been delivered from the sarcasm. At least I hope I have from my life.
I haven't heard it, yeah.
But I still fall into the negative body language, the harsh tone, just unhealthy communication patterns. I fail to listen to you when I have a negative view of you. I stop listening and I start projecting.
Something that we hear a lot with our couples is, we've already talked about the man is, there's a lot to learn especially if there hasn't been a good example. We talked about that in the last episode, that if there isn't a really good earthly father example, then a lot of times men really struggle with what does being a husband even mean? And when me as a wife focuses on, you never share. You're never sharing your emotions with me, and you're not listening to me, and you're not seeing my heart and all of these things, and I'm focusing on that, it actually shuts the husband down from trying. Because this is I watched you try to completely change who you were around communication. Sharing your heart, sharing your emotions with me. You didn't have verbiage to those things. And if I'm focusing on what you don't have, then I'm keeping you from growing. I'm keeping you from continuing forward in our communication because of the way that I'm focusing and criticizing you for what you are lacking. That if we were to shift that, there could be breakthrough. And so that's what we're talking about next, is I want you to really hear me when I say it starts with you, not with your spouse changing. It starts with you and what you start to focus on.
Personal responsibility. It always starts with you. I love that you brought that up. That is a good bit of our clients, and not pigeonholing all women into this, but most women are doing that. The nagging of the husbands, because they see something better. And it's typically because husbands don't have the tools to communicate. Typically, husbands don't have the tools to communicate and have good, effective conversations. And the wives are typically like, I need more. I need more. I need good communication from you. And I really appreciate you bringing that up. Not all the time, but typically. But we can overcome this behavior with personal responsibility.
Right. And here is number 1 of how to do that. Start recognizing and appreciating your spouse and their efforts. That one is so huge. And in using that example that we were just talking about with the husband who's learning how to communicate, if I focus on, hey, I noticed yesterday you communicated with me just how you were feeling and what was going on with you, and that meant so much to me. It helped me feel connected to you. It helped me realize you have emotions in there. And I really enjoyed hearing that. It made me feel intimacy with you. Thank you. Do you think that's going to make you want to do that more?
Amen. Amen.
Yes.
If you look for what I'm doing positively, Adele, and then you reward or recognize that, I'm like, oh, that's what I desire to do.
Yes.
Because it's connecting, it's intimacy, it's something I really desire in our life and in our marriage. So I desire that.
For the couple who is walking through betrayal, we have a broad spectrum of what betrayal can look like. And one of the things that I work on with the wives that I coach is looking at the heart versus the actions. Because if I'm focusing on betrayal, which every spouse who goes through betrayal, that is the focus, is where are you betraying me and how?
And it makes sense.
That if I begin to learn your heart first and I focus on that, then I'm able to see that, okay, this is a behavior. This is actually just a behavior that needs to change, not that it
that's
is
good.
a heart
Not the character.
of betrayal. It's not the character.
Oh, that's good.
And that's huge because I can really recognize in you that, oh, I can see your heart in what you did here. Wasn't that you were trying to betray me, although that's sure what it looks like. And we could put a lot of examples in there. I know that you not giving me your phone password is not what you just keeping me from getting into your phone, but more so that you're protecting it from other people. And I can really see that. And there's so many different circumstances we could put in there, but I'm just trying to give an example that just because something looks a certain way doesn't mean that's how it is. And when we focus on the heart, we can see way more of the picture.
Can I share one?
Yes.
I had an emergency phone call yesterday with a couple. They were in crisis and they needed something right away. I spent about 35 minutes on the phone, and the spouse was having a very difficult time with the wife was having a difficult time with accepting what the husband had did a year and a half ago in betrayal. And we were just kind of chatting about it and where they were right now and things like that. And when we got finished with that section of it, we kind of was talking about like, all right, what can we focus on? Your husband's right there beside you, and over the last year and a half, he has been actively engaged in behavior that is consistently lining up with integrity. Like his words and his actions are consistently lining up with that. He is not, in that year and a half, he has not made active behaviors to betray the relationship in any way.
Right.
He is doing things that fills himself up and makes you a priority. He is a priority to God, number one, and you, number two. We just went through those things, and she was like, yes. Well, yes. Wow. Yes. Yeah, that's him. Oh, wow. She had no viewpoint of it because of what she had focused on for the last, I think, week and a half, that they had been going down this argument that led to this crisis.
It can happen fast.
And by the time we got off the phone, it was 38 minutes we were on the phone. By the time we got off the phone, man, she was fine.
Brand new perspective.
Brand new. She's like, I love my husband. I'm engaged in this, and I'm excited, and a completely different perspective. And we need that. We need an adjusted perspective. You know, yesterday we were working on this material. You gave me a completely different perspective, and I was like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And we all need that because we can get focused on the wrong thing that leads us down the wrong path.
Myself included. I mean, it was just a couple weeks ago, I was focused on you not being personally responsible and taking care of your heart. And I found it in all the ways to the point where it really grew for me, and it made me really feel disconnected from you, and it made me feel unattracted to you. And I am in marriage ministry, and I know this, and it still happens. So it can happen to all of us. And we have to be really conscious of, oh man, I am focusing on what you're not doing rather than focusing on what you are doing. And if I shift my focus on that and have gratitude for you, my heart can reopen to you, and then we can have good conversation. I can communicate with you some things that were going on for me around where this perspective and focus came from to begin with.
Oh, that's really good, because what I hear you saying is you changed your focus to something positive that grew, but you didn't ignore anything negative that would have a negative impact in the relationship.
Right.
You focused on the positive, and you had good communication around the things that was not working.
Yes.
Now that's great.
Yes, and it impacted you differently
It did.
because I showed up whole and complete with
agree.
gratitude versus you're impacting me negatively because you're not taking care of your heart.
That's good. So let's go to that, because we told you at the beginning, stick around because we're going to give you practical tips to be able to walk through this. I desire to get rid of this negative mindset that I'm focusing on the wrong thing, and I desire something different. You already gave one. The next one you just mentioned, and that's gratitude.
Yes.
Gratitude for the spouse reframes the mindset around who they are and around how I feel about them
Yes.
instantly.
And the next one is acknowledgement, which you can join with gratitude so easily. Like, for example, I want to acknowledge you that the other night when we were at the wedding, I just saw you giving special attention to your daughter. And I can really see how that impacts her and how she looks at you. And just watching her look up at you while you were dancing made me so attracted to you for doing that, for being a good dad. And I also want to share, I can see that she wants more of that. She wants more of that special attention with her daddy.
Thank you.
That's how we can acknowledge and call someone to greater through an acknowledgement of what I'm seeing you do well, and I could see you can do more. I can see
like
our
that.
daughter wants more.
Yeah,
Things
I can
like
see
that.
that too. Thank you for the acknowledgement. I agree with you. Gratitude and then the acknowledgement of it, it does lift me up when you acknowledge me and call me out into something greater. I appreciate that.
Yeah. All right, so number 2 then is building an environment of support and encouragement. This one I think is so huge, and it has 3 points in it that we really don't have time to unpack these points because each one is an episode in itself.
We do want to build an environment of support and encouragement. And one of those ways is creating a safe haven, a place where we can both share, listen to each other, understand each other, understand our spouse.
We need a safe space, we need active listening, and we need constructive feedback. And like I said, all 3 of these points are an episode of their own, but we do have a program that is built just for this, where we teach you how to understand your spouse and how
Wouldn't
to
that be nice?
communicate with them in a safe environment. And I just want to say that active listening is not a gift. It's not something
skill.
we're born with. It's a skill that we practice and learn, or that we learn first and then practice. That the more we practice it, the better we get at listening. And that has been a journey that you and I have been on for a while now, is just learning how to listen to each other without judgment, having curiosity, and providing a safe space for each other to share. Then opens the ability for some feedback, especially if there needs to be negative.
That's good, because most people don't listen. The more I learn and practice listening, the more I see that I have a difficult time listening.
Yesterday, you provided a safe space for me to feel that I could share with you some feedback around how you approach me when we're planning these sessions. That if you approach it in a positive way, it engages me, versus if you approach it in a negative way, it shuts me down.
Yeah.
You provided that safe space. You gave me great listening. Neither one of us got pricked in that. And I was able to share that feedback with you that, hey, I see this better way, that if we do this, it's going to have better outcomes for us together as a couple. So,
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate the way you approached that conversation. And I am grateful that I chose to listen during
too.
that time, because there are times when I don't choose to listen.
right?
So thank you.
Yes, yes. So as we wrap up today, we have been talking all about what you focus on grows in your marriage and relationships. And you can really put this in any relationship in your life. Let's say you're single and you're not in a marriage. Well, maybe there are people in your life that you're focusing on the negative, that if you were to transform that and focus on the positive, what could be possible for you in that relationship as well as the marriage?
That's good. And we have journaling questions for you if you have your journal. How does my focus on the negative or positive impact my relationships around me?
And the second one is, what steps can I take to focus on the positive and create a supportive environment for the people around me? We are excited because in the next episode, you're going to hear all about a life-changing experience that you went through and the bitterness and resentment that I was struggling with at the same time. So we just want to invite you to join us for that next episode. I think you may see
be different.
something that's different in this episode because we're going to be sharing more of our story.
Yeah.
And it's very relatable and inspiring.
I'm really
So
excited for this one. This is going to be a completely different episode than any of the other ones we've done. So thank you for sticking around. Thank you for being with us on all these episodes. This was episode 29. Can you believe we have had 29 episodes?
Yeah.
And
I
you have
can't.
stuck around for every one of them. Thank you for that. Thank you for hanging out with us. Thank you for being intentional with your life.
Yes. And we want to invite you to go ahead and subscribe because every week we release a new episode. Once a month, we do live episodes where we engage with our audience. And if you subscribe, they will send you a reminder every time we release one. So you're not missing the tools that we're equipping you for to find that lasting freedom in your life. So we want to invite you to do that and then invite you to also share our episodes with someone that really matters to you. If you see another couple that's been struggling with how they relate to each other, you never know how the Holy Spirit is going to speak through one of our episodes for them. So I want to encourage you to share it.
Thanks. And you'll get a free toaster.
Not true.
Not true. Not true. No free toasters.
No free toasters. Quick gratitude.
I'm good. Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Are you following our notes or what?
Now I am. Right here. Right here. Gratitude. I'm ready.
Okay. My gratitude for you is what a servant's heart that you have. I was just talking with my friend the other day about having a generous heart. And I shared with her that as long as I've known you, you have had such a generous heart around all kinds of things for people and serving them with your time, serving them in any way that God calls you to. And it is something that I really look up to in you. It's something that inspires me to want more of that for myself. And so thank you for your servant's heart and your generous spirit that you have. I'm very, very grateful for that.
I received that. I really appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I am grateful for how you love my family. So in marriage, obviously, you are not related to my family. You're married into my family, and you have choices. And I really appreciate that you actively choose to love my family, and you actively choose to make them part of your family. And that's really important to me. And I'm just so grateful that that is your heart posture of just love.
Thank you. I received that. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
What do you think?
About?
Are we done?
No.
Oh, then I guess you think we're not done. And why would he say that? Then
Yeah.
I guess that's what you think.
Well, we have what the next episode is about, and then gratitude.
We have more. Stick around.
What questions do you guys have for me from the producer's corner?
Questions?
What is one area of your marriage that you've been focusing on something negative that you got something today to transform?
In my marriage, it's always funny before we're coming up to film, I know what we're going to film about just by what I'm going through in my life.
Isn't that funny?
I don't know the notes until I get here. But in the last week or two, there have been many opportunities where the lies of the enemy have been brought up. Like, see, this is why you should have been singles. Oh, this is why and I don't even want to say them because they're all just lies, and I don't want to
Right.
spread them.
Yeah.
But it's key to notice that they're lies. And one example was about a week ago, we're coming back from a celebration with the family, and I'm sharing a story, and I get done with the story, and the response I get is, "Wow, you talk a lot." And my natural reaction was then to shut down and to
Yeah.
be like, well,
Yeah.
then I won't talk at all, or I won't open up to you. I don't want to be close to you if you're gonna do that. But this is where what you guys are talking about, like or like pulling the thorns, doing the hot cycles, doing the healthy work to be whole and complete is so important, because having done that and continually doing it, it is, I wish it was a one-time deal, but it's a thing that I have to continually do. Being healthy, I realized those feelings and natural responses that came up for me, and I was able to say, that is not her heart, that is not the reality, these are lies, and I am not going to play into them. And I instead forgave her. In my head, I didn't be like, well, I forgive you for that. Self-righteous talk. It was like, okay, well, I'm going to choose not to hold on to that.
Amen.
I'm going to choose not to believe those lies. And instead, I'm going to choose to make light of this situation. And I chose to continue the conversation in a different direction and lighten it up and make some jokes and get her back engaged into the conversation. Because if she was saying I talk too much, I was probably going into too much detail around something. And I was like, okay, so let's switch gears.
Good for you.
Good.
And there have been several opportunities in the last week or two where that has come up. A certain situation with the kids, like 3-4 days ago. And I noticed it was the way she asked me what happened. It wasn't that she asked, hey, what happened? There was no curiosity. And
The filter you heard her through.
you're right. Great point. It was how I was interpreting it. And I was like, oh, I don't want to have this conversation right now.
Yeah.
However, having that conversation and just saying, hey, what's going on for you? I'm going to make sure that I am answering any questions you might have, and that I'm doing so out of love, and I am not getting worked up. And if you are worked up, not saying that you are, but I want unity.
Yeah.
And she goes, me too. And then we talked through everything, and at the end, we were closer.
Amen.
Yeah.
And it's taking that responsibility for my heart, and her taking responsibility for her heart, not vice versa.
Yes.
And then coming together with a committed heart to say, we are committed to oneness, and we're going to work together. And that has been monumental, because then there have been other things that come up where if we were divided, it would be really hard to handle. But because we are closer and united, and there's that oneness, it has been so encouraging to go up against these other things that have shown up in life.
Amen.
And feel like, hey, I've got a partner, I've got a teammate, I have got someone fighting with me in my corner. And even this morning when something happened that had me want to get worked up, she goes, hold on, I got this. Don't say anything, don't do anything. And I go, okay. And I surrendered that. I didn't want to. I wanted to say, no, I'll take care of this. She says, no, I got it. And then she replied with respect, with love, and brought God to the center of the situation and caused a different outcome than I would have.
Amen.
And I was like, oh, I have so much appreciation for you. I am so blessed to have you as my wife. And it is, she replied with a similar note of respect, and it all comes on the other side of doing the hard work to heal, to make sure that we're not letting these thorns and reactions run our lives and run our relationships. And it's important to always have an attitude of gratitude and seeking oneness, so that we don't focus on the negative things and let that come between us.
Yeah.
I love that you mentioned choice, that you had a choice in how you were going to respond, and you chose to let something go so that you could be more loving and relational and engage in the conversation, and you just changed the topic. It reminds me of yesterday when we were having that discussion about these episodes. And when you brought that up to me, my desire, like what was originally there for me, is I wanted to be defensive for what you were saying, because I had a different viewpoint at the time. But I'm thankful that I chose to remove that and just listen to what you were saying. And through a choice, I chose to let that go. I chose to not take myself so seriously so that I could actually hear.
I love that both of you said that, because the only reason you have a choice is because you have awareness.
Right. Yeah, that's good. That's
that
good.
There's a way of being you don't want anymore,
Amen.
and there's another way to be that you do want. That's the choice. And I wanted to bring that in for the audience, that it's the fact that you're identifying the lies, like, because all it takes is agreement with one of them.
One lie.
One lie.
Will unravel so quick.
Yeah, it's fast, and that's why it can still happen to us. We're not above it, because we're not above believing the enemy's lies on occasions. So it's about awareness that there are lies, awareness that I need to identify those lies, and then I have a choice of how I show up, because I am rejecting the lies of the enemy and I'm accepting truth of how God has called me to show up. And then because of that, I'm able to focus on the heart of my spouse. Like you were able to focus on your wife's heart rather than how your thorns want you to show up.
Amen.
You were able to see my heart, and what I was sharing is I just want collaboration. That's it.
Yep.
And my heart is unity and togetherness and connection. And had you been defensive, you would have never gotten to that. It would have shut me down. Thorns would have gotten pricked. So it is a lifestyle, and we talk about that so often, that you've got to know what it takes to be whole and complete, to live a lifestyle of being whole and complete.
Amen. Amen.
That's a wrap. We choose to focus on that. But I said it twice.
That's okay.
Okay.
Grab your journal, as in all of our episodes, you're gonna wanna. Grab your journals, just like every single one of our episodes. There is so much. Grab your journals, just like in every one of our episodes. There's lots of information you are gonna wanna. Grab your journals.
To take
Just
notes.
grab a journal, write stuff down.
I always focus. What? Oh, we're talking about. I misread that. Okay, let me start over.
It's called knowing your spouse. You know, no, it's not called knowing your spouse.
Knowing the heart of your spouse.
No, it's not called that either. It's called, we have a program for this, and it's called Understanding Your Spouse. You can go to our website, and I'm going to redo all of that.